The classroom was quiet as the young cadets waited for their instructor to speak. They came from 12 different species, each one hopping to learn the secrets of war from one of the greatest soldiers in the Galactic Alliance. Stood at the front of the room, his four eyes moving slowly across the rows of eager faces. His scales had lost their shine many years ago. His left arm ended at the elbow, a reminder of battles long past. But his mind was still sharp, and his voice still carried the weight of someone who had seen things that could not be forgotten. A young cadet raised her hand. Her blue feathers caught the light as she spoke. She asked about humans. She had heard stories, she said, rumors about the Terminus War. She wanted to know if the stories were true. The room grew even more quiet. Every cadet leaned forward. Humans were part of the Galactic Alliance now, respected and even feared. But 50 years ago, things had been very different. Walked to the window and looked out at the stars. He stayed silent for a long moment. Then he turned back to face his students. He told them he would share the truth, not the version in the history books, not the propaganda from either side. He would tell them what he had seen with his own four eyes during the Siege of Prime. He began by explaining how the Dominion had viewed humans back then. The Dominion was powerful. They had conquered 37 species across 200 star systems. They were strong, long-lived, and proud. When they first encountered humans, they saw only weakness. Humans were small and soft. Their bones broke easily. They lived for less than a century. They needed constant food and water and sleep. They could not see in the dark. They could not survive in extreme heat or cold without special equipment. By every measure the Dominion used, humans were inferior. So when the Dominion decided to expand into human space, they expected quick victories. They expected surrender after the first few battles. They expected the humans to understand that resistance was pointless. Paused and let out a sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been something sadder. He told the cadets that the Dominion had been fools, and he had been the biggest fool of all. He had been young then, barely 40 cycles old. He had just earned his first command. His superiors gave him what they called an easy mission. He was to lead a ground assault on a small farming colony called Haven's Rest. The colony had only 3,000 civilians and a tiny defense force. Intelligence reports said there were maybe 15 human soldiers protecting the entire settlement. Brought 200 warriors with him. He brought heavy weapons, armored vehicles, and air support. He told his soldiers they would be done before nightfall. They would take the colony, secure the civilians, and move on to the next target. It would be simple. The transport ships landed at dawn, led his forces toward the main settlement, a collection of simple buildings surrounded by fields of golden crops. He could see the humans watching from their positions. They did not run. They did not hide. They simply waited. The human commander was a woman named Lisa Cole. Did not know her name then. He only knew that she stood on top of a water tower at the center of the settlement, watching his army approach through a pair of visual enhancers. She was small, even by human standards. Her hair was the color of dried blood. She wore simple combat armor that looked old and worn. Ordered his forces to halt at the edge of the settlement. He activated his external speakers and demanded surrender. He promised that the civilians would not be harmed if the soldiers laid down their weapons. He gave them 1 hour to decide. Lisa Cole's response came over the radio. Her voice was calm and steady. She thanked him for the offer. Then she told him that she and her soldiers would not be surrendering today or any other day. She suggested that he turn his army around and leave before things got ugly. Soldiers laughed. Some of them had fought against a dozen different species. They had never lost a battle. The idea that 15 humans could threaten 200 warriors was absurd. Gave the order to advance. The first wave of soldiers moved into the settlement. They expected the humans to fall back, to find better defensive positions, to do what any sensible force would do when facing impossible odds. Instead, the humans attacked. They came from everywhere at once, from rooftops and windows and doorways, from holes in the ground and gaps in walls. They fought with rifles and pistols and grenades. When those ran out, they fought with knives and farming tools in their bare hands. Watched a human soldier named Danny Price take a plasma bolt to the chest. The shot should have killed him instantly. Instead, he stayed on his feet, raised his weapon, and killed 3 soldiers before a second bolt finally brought him down. Even then, he crawled toward cover, still trying to fight. Another soldier, a woman named Karen, ran into open ground under heavy fire to drag two wounded comrades to safety. She took burns on her arms and legs but never slowed down. Once she had delivered the wounded to a medical station, she picked up a rifle and returned to the front line. The battle lasted all day, through wave after wave of soldiers at the human positions. The humans gave ground slowly, fighting for every street, every building, every room. They used the terrain against the forces. They collapsed buildings to block advances. They flooded streets with water from broken pipes. They turned a simple farming settlement into a death trap. By nightfall had taken the settlement, but he had lost nearly 200 soldiers, 200 of his best warriors, killed by 15 humans and a handful of armed civilians who had joined the fight. Lisa Cole and her surviving soldiers had retreated into the hills north of the settlement. Superiors ordered him to pursue and eliminate them. It should have been simple cleanup. They were wounded and running low on supplies. They had nowhere to go. Looked at his remaining forces. He looked at the bodies of his fallen soldiers. For the first time in his life, he felt something cold in his chest, something he did not recognize. He told the cadets that he had not known then what that feeling was. He had never experienced it before. His people were conquerors. They did not know fear. But he was about to learn. He gathered his soldiers and led them into the hills. He told himself that this was just another mission. He told himself that the humans were already beaten. He told himself that by morning it would all be over. He was wrong about everything. The cadets sat in complete silence, turned back to the window and stared at the stars. What happened in those hills still woke him at night, even after 50 years, and he was going to tell them every terrible detail. Continued his story as the cadets listened without moving. He told them about the night after the battle, when he led his remaining soldiers into the highlands. The hills were covered in thick forests and rocky outcrops. The terrain was difficult even in daylight. In the darkness, it became something else entirely. They could not see well at night. Their eyes were built for the bright suns of their humans, had learned too late, could see better in low light. It was one of many things the Dominion's intelligence reports had failed to mention. His forces moved in a long column through the forest. They used lights to find their way, which made them easy targets. Knew this but had no choice. Without lights, his soldiers would walk off cliffs or stumble into ravines. The first attack came 2 hours after sunset. A human sniper killed 4 soldiers with 4 shots before anyone could react. The shots came from somewhere in the darkness above them. Ordered his soldiers to return fire, but they were shooting at shadows. The sniper vanished before they could find a target. They kept moving. An hour later, 3 soldiers at the back of the column disappeared. Their comrades heard brief sounds of struggle, then nothing. When sent a team to investigate, they found only blood on the rocks. No bodies, no trail to follow. The humans were hunting them. Had been a hunter his whole life. His people were predators. They took pride in their ability to track and kill any prey. But now he understood what it felt like to be on the other side. He understood what it felt like to be hunted by something that refused to stop. By morning he had lost 15 more soldiers, some to sniper fire, some to traps hidden on the trail, some to attacks so fast and quiet that no one saw anything at all. His forces were tired and scared. They jumped at every sound. They fired at every shadow. Called for air support, but the human soldiers had predicted this. They stayed under the thick forest canopy where sensors could not find them. They moved constantly, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted from above. He called for reinforcements, but his superiors told him the mission was supposed to be simple cleanup. They could not spare additional forces for what should have been an easy task. They told him to stop making excuses and finish the job. The second night was worse than the first. The humans attacked the camp itself. They came in from 3 directions at once, hitting the perimeter guards and vanishing before the main force could respond. They killed 12 soldiers in less than a minute. One of them was second in command, a veteran of 50 battles who had never lost a fight until that night. Barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of his fallen soldiers. He heard the sounds of gunfire and screaming. He felt the cold presence of enemies he could not see. On the 3rd day, his scouts found the human camp. It was hidden in a cave system near the top of a ridge, gathered his soldiers and prepared for a direct assault. He was tired of being hunted. He wanted to end this. The attack began at noon, when the sun was highest and eyes were sharpest. led the charge himself, climbing the ridge with his soldiers behind him. They expected a fierce battle at the cave entrance. The caves were empty. The humans had left hours before. They had known the attack was coming. They had left behind only a message carved into the rock wall in the language. The message said, "We are not trapped here with you. You are trapped here with us." Stared at those words for a long time. He understood then that he had underestimated these creatures in every possible way. They were not running. They were not hiding. They were doing exactly what his own people would do to inferior prey. They were wearing down their enemy before the final strike. That afternoon, his soldiers captured a human. The young man had been separated from his unit during the retreat. He was wounded in the leg and could not keep up with the others. Scouts found him hiding in a hollow log. His name was Shaw. He was 23 years old, young even by human standards. He had been a farmer before the war. He had never fired a weapon until the Dominion invaded his home. Interrogated him personally. He demanded to know where the other humans were hiding. He demanded to know their plans, their numbers, their weaknesses. He promised safety if cooperated. He threatened pain if he did not. Shaw looked at him with calm eyes. He was bleeding and exhausted. He must have known that he was going to die. But there was no fear in his face, only a strange kind of peace. Told him that he would not talk. He told him that Lisa Cole would never leave him behind. He told him that they had already lost this war. They just did not know it yet. Asked what he meant. The Dominion controlled most of human space. The colony was taken. The human soldiers were wounded and outnumbered. How could they possibly win? Smiled, he said they were not trying to win. They were buying time. Time for what? Demanded. Reinforcements were weeks away. No one was coming to save them. Just kept smiling. He said Lisa would come for him. He said she always came for her people. He said that was something the Dominion would never understand. Did not believe him. That night, Lisa Cole proved him wrong. The attack came at midnight. The humans struck the camp from 4 directions simultaneously. They used explosives to create chaos and confusion. They targeted the guards, the communications equipment, the ammunition stores. They moved through the camp like ghosts, killing anyone who got in their way. Fought his way toward the prisoner tent. He knew what they were coming for. He knew Lisa Cole was coming for Shaw. He arrived too late. The guards were dead, was gone, and written in blood on the tent floor was another message. It said, "Next time we take you." Stood in that tent for a long time. His hands were shaking. His hearts were pounding, and finally, after 40 years of life as a warrior, he understood what fear truly felt like. He looked at his cadets. Their faces were pale, some of them looked sick. Told them that was only the beginning. The humans were just getting started, and the worst was still to come. The days that followed were the darkest of his long life. He told the cadets that he had entered those hills with the confidence of a conqueror. He left them as something else entirely, something broken, something changed. The humans turned every advantage against the forces. They knew the land like they knew their own bodies. They knew which paths were safe and which ones would crumble under heavy armor. They knew where the water ran and where the ground was soft. They knew everything, and they used everything. Lost soldiers to rockslides that seemed natural until he found the cut marks on the support stones. He lost soldiers to hidden pits covered with branches and filled with sharpened wooden stakes. He lost soldiers to tripwires connected to grenades that the humans had made from farming chemicals and scrap metal. The humans attacked without pattern or prediction. Sometimes they struck at dawn, sometimes at midnight. Sometimes they let 2 or 3 days pass without contact, letting fear and exhaustion do their work. Then they would hit 3 times in a single night just when the soldiers started to relax. Lisa Cole was behind all of it, heard her voice on intercepted radio signals, calm and confident. She gave orders in simple codes that his translators could not break. She moved her tiny force around the hills like pieces on a game board, always one step ahead of every move. He tried to set traps of his own. He left supplies in obvious locations, hoping the humans would come to take them. He sent small groups of soldiers ahead as bait, with larger forces waiting in ambush. He tried every trick he had learned in 40 years of warfare. Nothing worked. The humans seemed to know what he was thinking before he thought it. They avoided his traps. They ignored his bait. When he set ambushes, they attacked from completely different directions, hitting targets he had left undefended. One morning, his soldiers found a scout hanging from a tree at the edge of the camp. The scout had been killed silently, then displayed as a message. Around his neck was a sign written in the language. It said, "You should have gone home." Soldiers began to whisper. They said the humans were not natural. They said Lisa Cole was some kind of demon. They said this mission was cursed. Some of them wanted to abandon the hunt and return to the settlement. Some of them wanted to call for evacuation and leave the planet entirely. Refused. He could not go back to his superiors with nothing but dead soldiers and failure. His pride would not allow it. His honor demanded that he finish what he had started. But deep inside, he knew the truth. He was no longer hunting the humans. He was just trying to survive them. On the 11th day, everything changed. His scouts found tracks leading toward an old mining complex on the eastern edge of the highlands. The tracks were fresh. The humans had finally stopped running. Gathered his remaining forces. He had started with 200 soldiers. Now he had less than 90. The rest were dead or too wounded to fight. But 90 warriors should still be more than enough to handle a handful of exhausted humans. He approached the mining complex with caution. The buildings were old and rusted. The main shaft went deep into the mountain. There were multiple entrances and exits, but his scouts had mapped them all. He set up a perimeter around the entire complex. No one would escape this time. He called out to Lisa Cole through his external speakers. He told her she was surrounded. He told her there was nowhere left to run. He offered one final chance to surrender. Her response came over the radio. Her voice was tired but steady. She told him that she appreciated the offer. She told him that her soldiers had fought well and deserved better than dying in a hole in the ground. Then she told him about the 300 civilians hiding in the deep tunnels. Felt the cold return to his chest. He asked her to repeat what she had said. Lisa told him again. When the invasion began, the farmers and their families had fled into the old mines. There were old women and old men down there. There were families with small children. There were pregnant women waiting to give birth. 300 innocent people who had done nothing wrong except live on a planet the Dominion wanted. She told him that she and her soldiers had been fighting to buy time. Not for reinforcements, not for evacuation. Just time for those people to go deeper into the tunnels, to hide in places even sensors could not reach. She told him that she had 4 soldiers left. Danny Price was dead. Karen was wounded but still fighting. Shaw was helping to guard the civilians. 2 others remained at the main entrance. She told him that the 5 of them would die before letting a single soldier reach those tunnels. Asked why. Why would she sacrifice her life for strangers? Why would any of them throw themselves away for people they had never met? Lisa's answer was simple. She said that was what humans did. They protected each other. They fought for each other. They died for each other. Not because they had to, because they could not imagine doing anything else. She said something else then, something that would remember for the rest of his long life. She said, "We are not afraid of you. We have something worth dying for. That is why you will never beat us." Stood outside that mining complex as the sun set behind the mountains. He looked at his tired, frightened soldiers. He thought about his orders and his honor and his pride. And he thought about the 300 people hiding in the darkness below, putting their lives in the hands of 5 wounded humans who had already given everything they had. He made a decision. He ordered his soldiers to hold position. He told them there would be no assault tonight. Then he contacted his superiors and requested a meeting with Fleet Commander. Things were about to get much, much worse. Fleet Commander arrived the next morning. His shuttle landed in a clearing near the mining complex, and he stepped out with the confidence of someone who had never known defeat. He was old even by standards, nearly 200 cycles. His scales were polished and bright. His 4 eyes gleamed with cold intelligence. He wore medals from 100 campaigns, each one representing a species crushed under Dominion rule. Met him at the landing site and gave his report. He described the battle at the settlement. He described the nightmare in the hills. He described the current situation at the mining complex. He kept his voice steady and professional, even as his heart raced with something he could not name. Listened without expression. When finished, the fleet commander walked to the edge of the clearing and looked at the mining complex in the distance. He stood there for a long time without speaking. Then he asked one simple question. He asked why the humans were still alive. Explained about the civilians in the tunnels. He explained that an assault would result in massive casualties for both sides. He suggested negotiation, prisoner exchange, anything that might end the standoff without more bloodshed. Turned to face him. His eyes were cold and hard. He told that the Dominion did not negotiate with inferior species. He told him that the civilians were not his concern. He told him that the only thing that mattered was victory. He ordered to use nerve gas. The mining tunnels would become a tomb. Every human inside, soldier and civilian alike, would die choking on poison. The problem would be solved within an hour. Felt something break inside him. He thought about Lisa Cole and her exhausted soldiers standing guard at the tunnel entrance. He thought about Corinne, wounded and bleeding but still ready to fight. He thought about Shaw, protecting strangers in the darkness below. He thought about 300 farmers and families, huddled together in the cold and the dark, praying for rescue that would never come. He thought about the thing he had heard in Lisa Cole's voice. Not hatred, not rage, something deeper and more powerful, something his people had forgotten long ago if they had ever known it at all. He thought about what it would mean to murder 300 innocent people, to fill their lungs with poison while they screamed and begged for mercy, to kill them not because they were enemies, but simply because they existed on a planet the Dominion wanted. He thought about who he was and who he wanted to be. And then he told Fleet Commander no. The word hung in the air between them. No soldier had ever refused a direct order from a fleet commander. It was unthinkable. It was treason. The penalty was death. His eyes widened. He ordered to repeat what he had said. Stood straight and looked directly into the fleet commander's face. He said it again. No, he would not murder civilians. He would not use poison gas on families and children. He would not follow that order, and he would not allow any soldier under his command to follow it either. Reached for his sidearm. He drew the weapon and pointed it at his chest. He said that treason was punishable by immediate execution. He gave one chance to withdraw his refusal. Did not move, he did not speak, he simply waited. Then something unexpected happened. A voice called out from behind them. One of soldiers, a young warrior named N, stepped forward. He said that he stood with his commander. He said that he would not participate in the murder of innocents either. Another soldier stepped forward, then another, then 5 more, then 10. Within minutes, more than half of the remaining forces had gathered behind. They were tired and scared and broken in 100 ways, but they had seen what he had seen. They had watched humans sacrifice themselves for each other without hesitation or regret. They had witnessed something they could not explain but could not ignore. Looked at the soldiers arrayed against him. His face twisted with fury. He called them traitors and cowards. He promised that every one of them would hang for this. He started to speak into his communicator, calling for reinforcements from orbit. Moved before he could finish. He struck the communicator from his hand. He took the weapon from his grip. He pushed the old commander to the ground and held him there. The soldiers who had remained loyal to raised their weapons. The soldiers behind did the same. For a long, terrible moment, it seemed like would fight while the humans watched from their tunnels. Then a voice came over the radio. It was Lisa Cole. She asked if anyone out there wanted to help end this war. Looked at the sky. Sensors showed ships approaching. Human ships. A relief fleet that must have been hiding somewhere in the outer system, waiting for the right moment, waiting for someone on the other side to do what he had just done. He picked up his communicator and responded to Lisa Cole. He told her that he was ready to talk. The standoff lasted 3 more hours, but no more shots were fired. No more blood was spilled. The soldiers who had followed laid down their weapons and allowed the human forces to land, and his loyalists were taken into custody. The civilians emerged from the tunnels, blinking in the sunlight, unable to believe they were still alive. And Lisa Cole walked out of the mining complex to meet face to face for the first time. She was smaller than he expected. Her armor was scorched and dented. Blood soaked through bandages on her side and shoulder. She looked like she should have been dead 10 times over. But her eyes were bright and fierce. And when she looked at, he saw something that terrified him more than anything he had experienced in those terrible hills. He saw gratitude. He saw respect. He saw the beginning of something that should have been impossible between enemies. He saw the thing humans called love, and he finally understood why it was the most dangerous force in the universe. The classroom had grown dark while told his story. The artificial lights had dimmed automatically, sensing the fading daylight outside. None of the cadets had moved to brighten them. They sat in the shadows, watching their instructor with wide eyes and silent mouths. Walked slowly back to his desk. His old bones ached from standing so long. His missing arm throbbed with phantom pain, as it always did when he remembered those days. He lowered himself into his chair and let out a long, weary breath. He told the cadets what happened next. Lisa Coles survived her wounds. The human medical officers worked through the night to save her, and she pulled through like she always did. Karen recovered too, though she walked with a limp for the rest of her life. Shaw went back to farming after the war. He married a woman he met at a veterans gathering and had 4 children. The Siege of Prime became a turning point in the war. When word spread that soldiers had refused to commit atrocities, other commanders began to question their orders too. The Dominion's iron unity started to crack. Rebellions broke out on occupied worlds. The war that should have ended in human extinction instead ended in Dominion collapse. 2 years later, the last Dominion battleship surrendered. The empire that had conquered 37 species crumbled into dust. A new democratic government rose from the ruins, one that eventually joined the Galactic Alliance alongside the humans they had once tried to destroy. Paused, a cadet raised his hand and asked what happened to Fleet Commander. Told him, was tried for war crimes after the conflict ended. The evidence against him was overwhelming. He had ordered massacres on a dozen worlds. He had approved experiments on prisoners. He had signed execution orders for millions of civilians across the former Dominion territories. Lisa Cole at his trial. She spoke calmly and clearly about what had happened at Prime. She did not call for vengeance. She did not demand blood. She simply told the truth and let the court decide. Was convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment. He died in his cell 20 years later, still insisting that he had done nothing wrong. Another cadet asked what happened between and Lisa Cole. Was quiet for a long moment, then he told them. After the battle, Lisa found him sitting alone on a rock outside the mining complex. She sat down next to him without speaking. They watched the sun set over the mountains together, 2 enemies who had become something else. She asked him why he had done it, why he had turned against his own people, why he had risked everything for humans he did not know. He told her the truth. He said that watching her fight had changed something inside him. He said that he had never seen anyone love anything the way she loved those people in the tunnels. He said that her willingness to die for strangers had shown him what his own people had lost in their endless quest for conquest. He said that she had reminded him what it meant to be something more than just a soldier. She had reminded him what it meant to care. Lisa listened without interrupting. When he finished, she reached out and put her hand on his arm. Her touch was warm and gentle. She told him that he had not betrayed his people. He had saved them from becoming monsters. They stayed friends for the rest of her life. She visited him every year on the anniversary of the siege. They shared meals and stories and comfortable silences. When she finally passed away at the age of 92, he was at her bedside, holding her hand. He told the cadets that humans lived such short lives. They burned so bright and faded so fast. But in their brief time, they loved with an intensity that his own species could barely comprehend. They would die for each other without hesitation. They would sacrifice everything for people they had never met. That was what made them dangerous, not their weapons, not their technology, not their numbers. Their love was their greatest weapon. Their willingness to suffer for each other was their ultimate strength. And any enemy who failed to understand that would lose to them every single time. The classroom was completely silent. Looked at his students, at the young faces from 12 different species, and he hoped that they understood what he was trying to teach them. He told them one final thing. He said that true fear was not about facing death. He had faced death 100 times and never flinched. True fear was facing the possibility that everything you believed was wrong. True fear was realizing that the enemy you thought was weak was actually stronger than you could ever be. Humans had taught him that lesson. They had broken him down and rebuilt him into something better. They had terrified him in ways he could never fully explain. And he was grateful for every moment of it. The lights came back on. The cadets began to stir, gathering their things and preparing to leave. But one cadet remained seated, a young human woman with brown hair and kind eyes. She waited until the others had gone, then approached his desk. She told him her name was Potter. She said that Karen had been her grandmother. Looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled, something he rarely did anymore. He told her that her grandmother had been one of the bravest soldiers he had ever seen. He told her about the day Karen ran into enemy fire to save her wounded comrades. He told her about the way Karen had fought through her injuries to return to the battle. He told her that without Karen and the others, none of them would be standing here today. Thanked him. She said that her grandmother had spoken of him often. She said that Karen had always called him the who remembered how to be good. Felt something warm in his old chest, something he had not felt in a very long time. Turned to leave, then paused at the door. She asked if he ever regretted what he had done, if he ever wished he had followed orders and remained loyal to the Dominion. Shook his head. He told her that what he did that day was the only thing in his long life that he was truly proud of. He told her that standing up to, refusing to commit murder, choosing compassion over conquest, those were the moments that defined who he really was. He told her that some fears destroyed you, but some fears set you free. Smiled at him, the same smile he had seen on her grandmother's face 50 years ago. Then she left and was alone with his memories. He sat in the empty classroom for a long time, watching the stars appear one by one in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, humans and 100 other species were building something new together. A galaxy where conquest had given way to cooperation, a future where love mattered more than power. And it had all started with one small woman who refused to stop fighting for the people she loved. Closed his 4 eyes and remembered Lisa Cole. He remembered her voice, her courage, her unshakable faith in the humans she protected. He remembered the day she changed his life forever. And he whispered a prayer of thanks to the strange, wonderful, terrifying creatures called humans. They had taught him what fear truly meant. And in doing so, they had set him free.